Hey everyone, welcome to something a little different here at the channel. This is episode 1 of Here's the Thing, my chance to chat directly to you guys about some of my opinions on various topics. I want to start this new series off with something a little different. I'm kind of the resident comic book aficionado here at the channel, and as you know, the rest of the guys here at Geek Garden, we really love video games. And there have been a lot of opportunities for those two passions to intersect. Possibly none more so than with my personal favorite superhero, Spider-Man. This is going to be part 1 of a multi-part retrospective, a look back on the Spider-Man games of yesteryear, where they started, where they went, and maybe by the end we can think about where they're going to go in the future. What makes a good Spider-Man game? Why did some succeed and some fail? Now, you may have seen, probably from the title, that we are going to be jumping in kind of already in the middle of things. There's a couple reasons for that. One of which is that even though there were Spider-Man games all the way back on the Atari, the modern line of Spider-Man games don't really owe much to those original precursors, and more importantly, I have played, some might say obsessively, every game that I'm going to be talking about in this series. The same can't be said for some of those older games back through the 80s, and I wouldn't feel right talking about something that I don't really know inside and out. But that's enough housekeeping. Let's talk Spider-Man. Spider-Man, as it was so simply and elegantly titled, was the first game to realize the dream of playing as Spider-Man in a 3D environment. The game was not, however, a fully free-roam title. We wouldn't get the first of those for a couple of years. It was developed by Neversoft for the PlayStation, with other developers handling other versions or ports for the Game Boy, PC, and notably, the N64. It was published in 2000 by Activision, before that name was a bad word to gamers. Spider-Man saw the player controlling the titular wall-crawler as he works to dismantle a criminal conspiracy. It is pretty standard Spider-Man fare, and most of the plot twists are visible a mile away, but it is fun, engaging, and manages to include a wide variety of characters, both hero and villain. The game design is fairly linear, taking the player from level to objective-based level. The game offers a little freedom in some of the levels, normally to uncover secrets or unlockables, of which there are many. The game features primarily 2 different kinds of levels, which are easily recognizable as taking place indoors or outdoors. The indoor levels usually involve trying to figure out where to go in a maze of hallways and different floors, while the outdoor levels feature a linear string of rooftops, with Spider-Man having to reach some location at the end for a variety of reasons. There's a plot reason as to why you can't just drop down to the street level, which we'll address more later. It's a clever way to hide what were obviously just technical limitations, which is pretty neat. The objectives themselves are also varied, and while you end up doing kind of the same thing over and over, they give you different reasons, and it makes you feel like there's a purpose to what you're doing. The player interacts with the game primarily through combat and traversal. Combat is fairly simple, allowing the player to string together small combos of 3 punches or kicks. You can combine your webbing into the combos for various effects, all of which feel like fairly classic Spider-Man moves, the like of which we'll see repeated and expanded on in future titles. The strangest of these abilities is probably wrapping yourself in a cocoon-like dome of webbing which will explode outward and damage all enemies around Spider-Man. It's a little weird, and it's a mechanic that will only survive a few more games before being lost in the annals of video game history. Traversal is likewise a fairly simple affair. You can run around and crawl on walls and ceilings, and the game uses the simple camera trick of looking through the ceiling so you can see the floor below you, and gives you a small point on the ground so you can accurately see where you'll land if you drop. You use your webbing to swing and, with the aid of a targeting reticle, immediately zip to another point. There's also a way to instantly zip to the opposite surface from where you are, ground to ceiling, ceiling to floor, or wall to wall. The tools are relatively simple, but so is the level design, and a skilled player can fairly reliably get where they want to go with comparative ease. Web swinging, for its part, is also pretty limited, allowing you to swing the length of 2 web swings which play together as a canned animation. You can't initiate the swing if there isn't a destination within reach, which primarily serves to keep the levels feeling appropriately sized, and keep little bonuses and secrets just out of reach, so you really have to position yourself and work for them. The UI is fairly simple and straightforward. The top left features a bar to keep track of your health and webbing. Peter uses web shooters in this particular game, so you can carry up to 10 cartridges, and when you're out, you're out. The webbing will auto-regenerate just enough for you to still be able to swing around, but you won't have any combat options with your webbing. Considering how powerful your webbing is against regular thugs, this actually does a really nice job of balancing the game. Do you use up your webbing now to quickly put down a thug and risk having little left later if something worse comes along? Or do you slug out this fight to make sure you have enough webbing to put down a later threat quickly? The game also features a Spidey compass, which is basically just a regular old objective pointer aiming in the direction you need to be heading, and awareness arrows, which simulate Peter's spider sense by pointing out when enemies are aware of you or about to attack from off-screen.
That's the last one.
The game also features a fairly simple stealth element, primarily featured in an area where you need to take out the bad guys quietly so they don't kill any of the hostages they have. There aren't any real mechanics in place for the stealth element, but stealth is something future games will expand on, and it is definitely present a little bit here. Now, we've gone over the mechanical elements of the game pretty thoroughly now. Let's see what the developers did to make use of their source material. Why was this not just a game, but a Spider-Man game? Spider-Man doesn't really break any new ground with its setting. It's clearly not an origin story, as this Peter has already met all the villains he will encounter in the game, and small references and Easter eggs point at other villains and characters that live in the world as well. Notable among these is a crane marked with a jack-o'-lantern, which reveals a secret Green Goblin hideout. Overall, the game feels like it is very much set in the comics of the time. Peter is married to MJ, most of the character designs are contemporary to the comics of the time, and Peter is clearly experienced and has been doing this for a while. As noted earlier, the story is pretty simple and doesn't break much new ground with regard to Spidey stories. It opens with an apparently reformed Doc Ock sharing his inventions at a science expo, only to have a fake Spider-Man steal the device, setting up a conflict with the police that will keep Peter busy throughout a good section of the game. Meanwhile, Doc Ock releases a mist into the city, the thing that we mentioned earlier which prevents you from swinging down to street level, which is preparing New York for symbiosis. While working to clear your name, you stumble upon a batch of new, artificially created symbiotes and move to take the mastermind down. The game features an impressive roster of both villains and guest heroes. Dr. Octopus is, unsurprisingly, the criminal mastermind, but he has recruited Carnage, Mysterio, and Rhino to his side as well. Peter also encounters Scorpion and then still new hot property Venom, who are pursuing their own agendas that kind of intersect the central conflict against Doc Ock. The Lizard even shows up in the form of a very neat cameo in the sewers. In the end, the developers even introduce a new villain in the form of Monster Rock, a horrifying, grotesque abomination formed when the red symbiotic half of Carnage temporarily bonds with Doc Ock. The resultant creature is meant to be so strong and terrifying that you can't even fight it, and instead must simply run away while the evil villain layer dramatically explodes. It was a neat addition to an otherwise pretty straightforward adaptation, and it would get what I believe is a reference in a future Spider-Man game years later. Many heroes also show up to provide moral or physical support to Spider-Man. His longtime friend Human Torch appears in a cutscene offering some advice, Daredevil stops by to confirm Spidey's innocence, and Punisher is tracking down the source of the same symbiote menace that Peter is after. Black Cat is a constant companion over the course of the game, arriving right at the beginning to introduce the tutorial level, and then becoming embroiled in the central storyline. Captain America even arrives to lend a hand at the end, and through the use of cheat codes, Namor and Silver Surfer can be spotted in brief appearances. If the game has a failing, it would be underrepresenting the Peter Parker side of his life, which is to be expected at the time and is certainly something that future games will improve upon. We do see Peter without the mask a few times early on, but J. Jonah Jameson and Mary Jane are the only people from Peter's life who show up at all, and in MJ's case it is simply as a damsel in distress. Of course, we can't talk about characters without talking about the man himself. When a character has been around for as long and been reinterpreted as often as Spider-Man, there's bound to be some disagreement about how he should be written and portrayed. For my money, however, Spider-Man is almost pitch perfect here. He is written smart, funny, and clearly experienced. This is a Spider-Man at the height of his powers who knows what he's doing. His immortal credo of power and responsibility is present throughout, as he helps protect people who don't like him and puts himself in danger because he's the only one who can get this done. Rino Romano, who lended his pipes to the Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon, brings a vibrance and fun so essential to the character, and delivers the pathos and angst with a hint of self-amusement, easily putting him in my top 3 or 4 favorite Spidey voice actors. Most importantly, and this is something we will see future games fail at, is the jokes and humor aren't painfully self-aware. They aren't written solely for the audience. This game also features what is one of my personal favorite Spider-Man video game scenes, or possibly Spider-Man scenes from any medium. I'll just go ahead and let it play here because it's lovely.
Hey, you gonna pay for that tower? Uh-oh, spider sense tingling. One more step and it's a load of web fluid sticking you to that wall.
Well, it's not the most romantic proposition I've ever had.
Black Cat? Oh, I'm so glad it's you.
Good to see you too, big boy, but you got a problem. Venom's got control of the Jumbotron in Times Square. He's been ranting for hours with a message for you.
Venom's ugly face on that big screen? Now that's scary.
That's not all. Rhino's on a rampage over at Omnitech as well.
What is this, the bad guy Olympics? Look, Times Square's on the way to Omnitech. Let's find out what Venom's up to, and then we'll tackle Rhino.
The Venom Marathon continues on the biggest TV in New York. We're shouting out to the whole big rotten apple here, people.
Sad thing is, he'll probably get his own talk show for this.
So we've got this beautiful redhead. You know her. She's one of those famous bimbos. We have decided that this poor little lassie has 24 hours to live. 24 hours! Oh, by the way, her name is Mary Jane Parker.
No. Mary Jane?
So, just in case someone, I don't know who it could be, if any of you type-wearing freaks out there want to save little Miss Fashion Model, then bring it on! Meanwhile, New Yorkers, the Venom Marathon will continue!
Listen, I realize what this means. Forget about helping me with Omnitech. I can handle Rhino.
Rhino by yourself? Thanks, Cat, but no thanks. Look, being Spider-Man has given me a lot and taken a lot away, but one thing never changes. My responsibility to use my powers for others before myself, no matter what the cost. There are innocent people at Omnitech, and they need our help right now. I won't let them down. Then I'll stop Venom. And this time, it's for the last time.
Oh, it's just so good! I could talk about that one scene for hours. How it highlights his humor, but his underpinning of responsibility and selflessness are brought to the front. How he's taken all of the beatings of life and become reinforced, not broken because of them. Scenes like this one that we just watched are the reason why I love Spider-Man so much. It's the reason why, to me, Peter Parker is one of the greatest superheroes of all time. Oh, the scene's just so good. But back to the game. The game also has a veritable cornucopia of extras, from collectible comic covers to unlockable costumes, which introduce new abilities to the player, such as the classic black suit featuring unlimited webbing, or the unlimited costume enabling you to turn invisible. There are training modes and challenges where you can race against time or try to beat as many enemies as possible in a time limit. The game also makes use of good old-fashioned cheat codes, which let you accomplish a variety of fun things. Most notable of which is the What If mode, which is narrated by the Watcher and adds all kinds of strange Easter eggs and little oddities to the game. Despite some small failings, the game is an absolute blast and still holds up in a lot of ways, even today. The lack of twin-stick camera control can be irritating by modern sensibilities, but if you are a die-hard Spider-Man fan and for some reason haven't played this game, do yourself a favor and change that. I've tried to be really thorough in looking through the game here, but in writing this look back on it, I've realized that the game actually has a surprising amount of depth, with interesting little nooks and crannies to be uncovered and cherished. There was a testimonial on the back of this game case that proclaimed it to be the best superhero game ever, and it is not hard to see why. An incredible amount of love for the character and source material is very much present here, and this game absolutely laid the groundwork for modern Spider-Man games. Well, there you have it, guys. I tried to be as thorough as I could, but the bottom line is this is just a really excellent game. It's a fun hero adventure and it sets a great Spidey tone. Now, this is definitely one of the things that got me into Spider-Man at an early age. This and the 90s cartoon together definitely helped to create the Spider-Man fan that I am today. So there's definitely a lot of personal bias in the sort of breakdown that you just saw, because I have a lot invested in this game. I tried to be as objective as I could in assessing various strengths and weaknesses, but this is by no means a review, and there's just a lot of passion here. But let me know what you guys thought about the game. Was it as important in forming your Spidey fandom as it was mine? Did you grow up with this game? Have you never played it and are now thinking of looking back? Let me know in the comments below. I could talk about Spider-Man for hours, and I'd love to have you guys in on the discussion. And while you're down there commenting, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share this video with any fellow webheads out there. No, that's it for this time, guys. I'll see you on the next episode when we delve into this game's sequel. Until then, face front, true believers.